welcome. Thank you so much for joining me in this workshop. I'm really excited to show you what I do and just share paper craft with you. So my name is Mel O'Dell. I'm a Newcastle-based artist and I call myself a paper illustrator, but I basically cut and glue paper down to cardboard. I thought I would share a little story with you of how I got into this, just so I can try and foster an environment where you know a bit about me and this isn't too daunting. So I actually started this medium a couple years ago by accident. I was having an exhibition and mural reveal party, and at the last minute I thought, oh my god, I need to have signage and say where the bar is, where the exhibition is and the mural is, because it was a bit of a weird layout. And right at the last minute I had spare cardboard and I started cutting all the signage, and it was bright, it was colourful, it was really quirky and really fluid, and it had a great response. And my partner said, this is really cool, people are digging it, you should actually get into this. And it wasn't until 7 months later, around Christmas time, where I was running out of work because I'm a casual teacher. It was coming into Christmas and I was kind of strapped for cash, and someone put up a post saying, can anyone do me a custom portrait? And I thought, oh, I probably can. So I put my name forward, and then a little while later I did it, I completed it. It looked pretty cool, it was really unique. I shared it on Instagram and it had a great response, and it kind of has snowballed since then. So I've done a lot of commissions and they've progressed to a level where they're really detailed now, and I've started to take a long time with them. So I also just want to preface this workshop with, it might take you a really long time. So in this workshop, I didn't want to just say, look, this is what we're doing and we're all going to do the same thing. I wanted it to be really unique, and I wanted you to choose a picture that brings you a lot of happiness, or maybe you want to gift it to someone. So with this workshop, I'm going to share with you all my tips and tricks and step-by-step of how I create my paper craft illustrations. So here is a little example of one of my works I've done before. As you can see, it's not super detailed, but it really focuses on in what's the imperative details of the work. So we've got a fireplace, we know it's Christmas, and we've got two cute twins with their dog eating cookies. So with my works, I really like to hone in on what's the main aspect and how are we going to know this signifies a special time. So let's jump into it. When you start off, you need to think about a couple of things. So you need to think, what picture are you going to replicate, or pictures? You could meld a couple together. So maybe you have a different background to a different picture of you and your friends, or a loved one, or a dog perhaps, and then you can meld them together. So you've got that, you need to choose what pictures you're doing, and then you need to choose what size you're doing. So I recommend either measuring out maybe A4, A2, A3, or you could go even bigger than that. Or you could simply go to Kmart and buy one of those awesome $12 to $16 frames, and within them comes a border. So the border looks like this, and a really cool trick I learned recently is you can trace inside here, and that gives you a lovely border to work within. So you're not going to lose any of your works. And because this is a scrap border, I'm just going to demonstrate what you can do by drawing. So really simple. And now when I lift this away, this is going to indicate where your work is going to sit in. So you're not going to work over here because you're going to lose all that lovely detail. Next up, I don't always do this myself, but when I teach workshops, I think it's a really great way for you to wrap your head around what you're actually going to be doing. So I sketch out the background first because I think it's a great way to work, and it just helps you add a bit more detail in. So working from the back to the front adds in a lot more depth. So as I said before, we're not all going to do the same image. So this is my image that I'm going to replicate. It's actually of a special memory. So this is my birthday last year in Tasmania with my partner, and we rented a van. So again, it's really good for you to choose a special memory or pick a memory or photo that you know someone else will love and appreciate. But getting back into it, so when it comes to drawing the background, you need to think, okay, how is this going to replicate the image in the way I want? And how much detail do you want to put into it? So I'm going to sketch out a little bit for you. So it's really good to think, okay, where is the sky and where is the ground? So it doesn't matter if it's rough, it's okay. It's just, this helps set you up to know what you're going to paper cut in the future. So you can see the background here, it's a bit blurry, but we've got a lot of trees, leaves, we've got a dirt road here, some bark, and then some shrubbery at the front. So imagine we've got our sky here. We're just going to lay out where the trees are. So it's quite bushy. There's a tree going up here. Yeah. And I'm actually going to take this one away because, like some great cooking shows, I've prepared something earlier. So as you can see, this is what I've prepared earlier. And again, I've just focused on the basic shapes. So the sky would go here, the trees are here, the shrubberies here, more trees, the ground, the log, and then the shrubbery. I've also included the van, but something I want to point out is you might choose to not do a background, and that's okay. You have total creative license with this workshop. So if you didn't want to draw in everything, you could just focus on the people. I've cooked this up earlier as well. And again, when you are sketching out the people, it's okay if it's not super intricate, not really detailed. I think that the more simple your sketches are, it just helps you with your paper cutting. And it really helps you think, okay, what are the main aspects of this work that I need to focus on to represent the image? And that's a nice segue. So when it comes to paper cutting people, I really like to think about, okay, what are the main features of the person you're paper cutting? So since I'm in front of you on camera right now, I'll just point out to you, because I've paper cut myself a lot, and I always focus on, okay, my cheeks are quite prominent, my nose is a bit big, I've got brown eyes and wavy dark hair. So I always focus in on that. And you can see in this sketch, that's also what I've focused on. When it comes to my partner, I'll also need to focus on the big wavy hair, the beard, the mustache. He's got smaller cheeks, and he does have prominent eyebrows, but you can't quite see in this sketch. And then when you move on to the figure, you don't have to be super detailed, but it is good to think about, okay, are they wearing their favorite jacket or their favorite jeans? And you can also customize as you want. You don't have to paper cut as the image shows you, but you can have some creative license again. Yeah. So that's the drawing stage. When you get up to the background, as I said before, it's always good to think about, let's work from the back to the front. So I'll get that piece of paper again. Yeah. So when it comes to the paper cutting, it's good to just have your paper everywhere. I normally work with a really messy desk, but that works for me. Yeah, so when it comes to the paper, you can have creative license with the sky. So you can think, okay, maybe this color isn't popping enough. So maybe you want to have a really bright blue sky. Or I found a color that I liked. Doesn't need to be too bright. And then we simply cut away. Now we've come up to a good tip. So when you're paper cutting, the cardstock that you're cutting might not be the perfect size, and that's okay. You can just be clever with how you paste it down. So when it comes to a seam like this, you can always put a tree in front of it or clouds or something like that. Now while I am gluing this down, I just wanted to point out, so I'm using cardstock and it's a bit thicker than paper, and the reason I use it is because when you glue it down, you might not be able to see, but it's a bit bumpy, and with the cardstock it's not going to matter. However, with paper, it would wrinkle or just be a bit uneven. Yeah. So we've got that down. And then next up, if you can see the image, we've got the tree. Now you would have already noticed that I cut things freehand. However, you are welcome to, because this can be very helpful. So you choose which side do you want to be the front, and there's always, with the cardstock I use, there's always one more textured side and one more smooth. So I like to use the textured side. So I'll demonstrate this way. You can actually just draw things on the back because people aren't going to see it. It's okay to work smarter, not harder. And then you can just cut using that as a guideline. So while I'm cutting this last bit out, people often ask me, okay, you must use the best scissors, you must use the smallest scissors. And to be honest, while these aren't the scissors I use normally, these are the scissors I normally use, and these are just $3 from Kmart. They are breaking on me, but you don't need the best of the best, you just need scissors with a longer blade. Yeah. And then when it comes to glue, any glue works really well as long as it's not the glue that's going to dry and have a yellow stain or a red stain. I have used that in the past, and while it's more fun for kids to use coloured glues, it isn't so great because sometimes it will leave the residue and stain the paper, and it doesn't have that overall clean effect, which is what we're after. Yeah. So I've glued this down. You can see I've covered the seam nicely. You can't tell that there was even a break in the paper anymore. Yeah. So I'm going to bring up something I've made earlier again. So this is the background that I've pre-made. You can see that I've gone off the sketch and I've worked from the back to the foreground, and I've included some nice little intricate details like smaller trees, little leaves. I've even got a little bit of like the twigs, bark here, and even some shadows. When it comes to the background, you can put in as much detail or as little detail as you like. For example, it's still really effective even if perhaps you're doing a beach. So to signify a beach, you could have a band of yellow a tiny band of white, light blue, dark blue, and then a sky and a sun, and that's still going to be really effective. Yeah, so we've got my background here. I also just want to touch on light. So as you can see in this photo, you can see there's lighter areas in the photo and then there's shade. So if you want to add even more depth to your image, it's good to play around with different tones of colors. So for example, you can work with dark brown, and then a lighter brown, and then that just creates a drop shadow on something. Yeah. So with this, we now have creative license to decide how much detail do we want to put in from this. So we could go with the van and then put the people in it, or we could just have two big heads. It's totally up to you. But what I wanted to show with you, similar to how I did the tree just before, when it comes to people, you can draw on the background and think, okay, what shapes is the head or the cheeks or anything like that? Because when it comes to more intricate details, it can be a bit harder, but you can always make it easier for yourself. So I'll get my image of us up. Now I can see that the shape I need to draw is totally round and oval. So we can just go here. And then, so this head is a bit smaller, so we can do a little bit thinner. And then you can just cut out around the lines. So I think when it comes to paper cutting, it's quite simple when you break it down. However, it's just the steps that can make it a bit trickier. So I'm quite happy with that. Now, while you're paper cutting, I totally recommend you put on your favorite tunes. So personally, I love 80s hits. I just think it gives me a really good rhythm and it adds to it. Or you could even pop on Netflix or a great podcast, just because we've made a lot of decisions at the start. So we've thought about what photo we're going to create. We've already thought about the size. We've already thought about how detailed we want it to be. You can just get into a nice rhythm and you can just be cutting away, listening to some great tunes. And yeah, honestly, another bit of advice is don't rush. Take your time, make this the most enjoyable process it can be. Yeah. So I'll just pop this to the side. I will show you, I've already pre-cut more elements. So this is what I was talking about before. You can either decide to have a lot of details. So here's an example. You've got a fairly detailed background, which you could add to later. And now I've made a fairly detailed van. For this, to create the shape, I actually did have to sketch this out and play around with it just so it was in my mind. And then I did draw on the back of this shape. Yeah. So with this, you could decide, okay, yep, I've done the van, the people will go in here. And if you do decide that, then you just have to create the people a bit smaller. However, as I'm placing this down, you can see you could get a bit quirky with your image and experiment. So you could have the van, and then you could make it a bit bigger so it's just easier to paper cut the people. Yeah. So I'm happy to make this a bit more quirky, and I'm just going to glue it down and then give you a better shot of it. So I'll just point out to you how I actually achieved making this van. I started off with the blank bit of paper, so this creamy paper with the solid shape with the wheels cut out. And then I actually cut a black square to put in it. And I think it's always great if you're going to cut out like a van or something where you want to show a bit more depth, it's always good to stick down the block color first and then work your way forwards. So that's how we work overall with these kind of paper cuts. And again, as I think I've said it so many times before, it just adds a lot more depth. Yeah. And then you may wish to, but I think you can still achieve a lot with just scissors, but you can use scalpel knives to cut these really intricate details. And if you want to cut a hole within a circle, that can be great. My advice is when you're doing that, just reinforce, take some breaks because it does put a lot of pressure onto your hands, and also use a cutting mat. But you can achieve all of this with just a pair of scissors, and as long as you take your time, you'll be fine. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm quite happy with my image. As you can see, so we've got some happy people, and the reason why I've cut my eyes like these, so little arches facing down, is early on I decided it just makes the people a bit more cuter and a bit more happy. But you might like to decide to cut eyes in a different way, and a different way I've done it in the past, I'll just demonstrate it and make it a bit bigger, is you can cut white into a little almondy shape. So an almondy shape like this, and then you can pick out the eye color and put it as a circle within this shape. So you could do eyes like this, we'll just stick it down. However, when you do have eyes like this, they just look a bit more intense. So it's up to you how you want to create the look of your people. And then secondly, I always put cheeks on people. It just, I don't know, makes the work have a really happy feel and have a nice, energy about it. Yeah, so that's pretty much how I make all of my paper illustrative works. I hope you've enjoyed this workshop and you've taken a lot from it. I really can't wait to see what you've created and how you found this workshop to be. This was my first workshop teaching to a camera like this in a longer form, so yeah, I'm really excited to see how it all works out. Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.